My name is Aubrey Parker, and at 28, I was finally going home for Christmas after 3 long years away. Snow blanketed my parents' driveway as I arrived with a car full of thoughtfully wrapped presents and high hopes for reconciliation. Little did I know, my family had other plans for me, specifically, 9 little plans running around in footy pajamas. When I overheard them discussing their scheme to use me as the designated babysitter while they enjoyed their adult Christmas party, something inside me snapped. Before I tell you how I turned my Christmas disaster into the best holiday ever, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever felt taken for granted by family. Growing up as the eldest child in the Parker family came with an unspoken job description: default babysitter, responsible one, and the standard bearer for my 3 younger siblings. My parents, Laura and Robert, had always held high expectations for me while seemingly giving my siblings, Megan, Brian, and Ashley, much more freedom to pursue their own interests. From as early as I can remember, family gatherings meant one thing for me: being assigned to the kids' table not as a child, but as the supervisor. While the adults enjoyed their conversations, wine, and relaxation, I'd be changing diapers, resolving toy disputes, and making sure nobody choked on a Christmas cookie. At first, I didn't mind. I loved my cousins and siblings, and being helpful made me feel valued. As my siblings grew up and started having children of their own, the expectation only intensified. Megan had 3 kids under the age of 6, twin boys Thomas and Jack, plus little Lily. Brian had 2 children, Emma and Noah, while Ashley, the youngest, somehow already had 4 kids: Madison, Sophia, Ethan, and baby James. That made 9 children total, ranging from 8 years old down to just 11 months. Aubrey is so good with the kids became the family mantra, often said with a smile while simultaneously handing me a screaming toddler. Nobody ever asked if I had other plans or interests. It was simply assumed that as the unmarried, childless sister, my time was less valuable and therefore available for family service. The breaking point came 3 Christmases ago. I had just landed a major client at my marketing firm and was exhausted from weeks of preparation and presentations. I'd been looking forward to actually relaxing during the holiday, maybe having some adult conversations about my growing career, perhaps even receiving some recognition for my professional achievements. Instead, I spent the entire Christmas Eve dinner in the basement with 7 children. This was before James and Lily were born, heating up chicken nuggets and mediating fights over which Christmas movie to watch. I missed the special holiday meal my mother had prepared. I missed the gift exchange. I missed the mulled wine and Christmas stories. By the time I got all the kids to sleep and rejoined the adults, they were 3 glasses of wine in and barely acknowledged my existence. "There she is," my father had said with a lazy smile. The kid whisperer. No questions about my job. No interest in my life. Just appreciation for the free childcare. I left early the next morning, making excuses about work, and hadn't been back for Christmas since. For 3 years, I sent gifts by mail and made brief appearances at summer gatherings when childcare expectations were less intense due to outdoor activities. I made excuses about work commitments and busy schedules. In reality, I was protecting myself from being taken advantage of again. During those 3 years away, my career flourished. I worked my way up from marketing coordinator to marketing director at a prestigious firm in Chicago. I had my own team now, managed major accounts, and had just received a substantial year-end bonus. Part of me was excited to share these accomplishments with my family. Maybe now they'd see me as more than just good old reliable Aubrey. This Christmas was supposed to be different. I had explicitly told my mother I was coming home to celebrate with the family as a whole. I had purchased thoughtful gifts for everyone, not just the obligatory toys for the kids, but meaningful presents for my siblings and parents too. I'd even practiced responses to deflect any babysitting requests. "I'm really looking forward to catching up with everyone this year," I had told my mother over the phone. "We're all excited to see you, sweetie," she had replied. "It's been too long." What she didn't say was, "We're all excited to see you, handling 9 children while we party." The drive to my parents' suburban home outside Boston had been filled with holiday music and optimism. I really believed that 3 years of distance might have reset our family dynamic. I had grown more confident, more established in my identity outside of being the family helper. Surely, they would see and respect that. As I pulled into the snow-covered driveway of my childhood home, Christmas lights twinkling against the early December darkness, I felt a flutter of hope. This Christmas would be different. This Christmas, I would be treated like an adult with my own life and accomplishments. This Christmas, I was wrong. My parents' house looked like something from a Hallmark Christmas card. Icicle lights hung from the roofline, a festive wreath adorned the front door, and, through the large bay window, I could see the glow of the Christmas tree, the same spot where it had stood throughout my childhood. For a moment, I sat in my parked car, taking it all in, allowing nostalgia to wash over me. The front door swung open before I could even knock, revealing my mother in a red cardigan with embroidered snowflakes, her standard Christmas attire for as long as I could remember. "Aubrey," she exclaimed, pulling me into a tight hug that smelled of cinnamon and vanilla. "You're finally home." My father appeared behind her, his salt and pepper hair now significantly more salt than pepper. "There's our girl," he said warmly, giving me a bear hug after my mother released me. The initial welcome felt genuine. As I stepped into the house, the familiar scent of pine from the Christmas tree mixed with cookies baking in the oven transported me straight back to childhood. For a moment, I felt a lump in my throat. Maybe I had been too hard on them. Maybe this year really would be different. "Your siblings will be here tomorrow morning," my mother explained as she helped me with my coat. "We thought you'd appreciate a quiet night to settle in before the chaos descends." I smiled gratefully. "That sounds perfect." "Your room is all ready," my father added. "Same as always." That was both comforting and slightly disappointing. I was 28 now, a successful professional, yet in my parents' home, I would always be in my room, unchanged since high school, complete with debate team trophies and posters of bands I hadn't listened to in a decade. "I brought presents," I said, gesturing to my car. "Let me grab them." After bringing in my suitcase and the bags of carefully wrapped gifts, I headed upstairs to unpack. My childhood bedroom was indeed same as always, pale blue walls, white furniture, and a twin bed that now felt comically small. I set my suitcase on the bed and began hanging a few items in the closet when I heard voices drifting up from below. The layout of the house meant that the heating vent in my bedroom connected directly to the kitchen below, creating an unintentional intercom system I had exploited many times as a teenager. Now, it was about to reveal truths I wasn't prepared for. "Thank goodness Aubrey's coming," I heard my mother say, her voice clear through the vent. "That's 9 kids taken care of." There was a pause, then my sister Megan's voice responded, "I know. I've been so stressed about childcare during the party. The twins are going through such a difficult phase, and Lily's still so clingy." My hands froze in the act of hanging up a sweater. They were already discussing babysitting duties, and I'd been in the house less than 30 minutes. "Does Aubrey know she's on kid duty?" That was my sister Ashley's voice. "Not explicitly," my mother replied, "but it's always been the arrangement. She's so good with them, and it's not like she has her own family to worry about." The casual dismissal in her tone made my chest tighten. "We should get her something extra nice this year," my brother Brian chimed in. "Considering we finally got her to come home and solve our childcare situation." There was laughter, the comfortable laughter of people sharing an inside joke. "Except the joke was me and my time." "The kids are excited to see their Aunt Aubrey," Ashley added. "Madison keeps asking when she can show her the dance routine she learned." "That's sweet," my mother replied. "And perfect timing too. She can perform it for Aubrey while we're at the Johnsons' cocktail party on Christmas Eve." I told Carol we'd all be there around 8. "All of us except Aubrey, you mean?" Megan clarified with a chuckle. "Well, obviously," my mother responded. "Someone has to watch the children." I sank onto the edge of my bed, the sweater still clutched in my hands. They had it all planned out. Not only was I expected to babysit during family gatherings, but they had also committed me to watching 9 children while they attended a neighborhood party. Without asking me. Without even the pretense of including me in the decision. "Should we get her something extra for doing this?" My father's voice now entered the conversation. She did mention something about a promotion at work. A promotion? Ashley sounded surprised. At that marketing job? Is that still a thing? I thought that was just a stepping stone until she figured out what she really wanted to do, Brian commented. Whatever it is, I'm just glad she's here, my mother concluded. Christmas Eve is sorted, and we can all enjoy the Johnsons' party without worrying about the kids. A Christmas miracle, someone, I think my brother-in-law, joked, followed by more laughter. I sat completely still as their conversation moved on to other topics, the menu for Christmas dinner, who was bringing what dishes, the gift exchange logistics. My presence had been reduced to a convenience, a solution to their childcare problem. My career? An afterthought, a temporary job rather than the successful profession I'd built. My time? Less valuable than theirs because I didn't have children of my own. 3 years away, and nothing had changed. If anything, the expectations had grown more entrenched. Now there were 9 children instead of 7, and I was supposed to miss not just family time, but an entire evening event to accommodate everyone else's plans. Tears of frustration burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Instead, I felt something else building inside me, a quiet, steady resolve. I was no longer the people-pleasing eldest daughter desperate for approval. I was Aubrey Parker, marketing director, a professional woman who commanded respect in boardrooms across Chicago. And I was done being taken for granted. I took a deep breath and stood up, smoothing down my sweater and squaring my shoulders. This wasn't going to be the Christmas they expected. I had some plans of my own to make. I gave myself exactly 15 minutes to process what I'd heard before heading downstairs. I needed to be calm and clear-headed, not emotional. This wasn't about throwing a tantrum, it was about standing up for myself as an adult. My mother was in the kitchen preparing dinner, humming along to White Christmas, playing softly from the Bluetooth speaker on the counter. She looked up as I entered, her face brightening. There you are. I'm making your favorite, chicken pot pie. I remember how much you loved it when you were little. The gesture would have been touching if it weren't immediately followed by, would you mind peeling the potatoes for tomorrow? I'm trying to get ahead on preparations since I'll have so much to do before the Johnsons' party on Christmas Eve. I took a deep breath. About that party. Oh, you'll love the Johnsons, my mother interjected, misunderstanding completely. Carol always goes all out with the decorations, and their eggnog is legendary. I heard you talking earlier, I said, keeping my voice steady. Through the vent. About me watching the kids while everyone goes to the party. My mother's hands paused briefly over the vegetables she was chopping, but she quickly resumed. Oh, you know how it is during the holidays. The kids get so wound up, and you've always been so good with them. You didn't ask me, I pointed out. You all just assumed I'd do it. She set down her knife and turned to face me, her expression a mixture of confusion and slight defensiveness. Honey, it's just what we've always done. You're so good with the children, and they adore their Aunt Aubrey. That doesn't mean I should automatically be excluded from adult activities and relegated to babysitting duty without even being consulted. My mother sighed, as if I were being difficult. You're overreacting, sweetie. It's just one evening, and it's what family does. We help each other out. Is it helping each other when it's always me doing the same job? When do the others take turns? At that moment, my father walked into the kitchen, catching the tail end of our conversation. What's this about taking turns? My mother gave him a look that clearly communicated I was being problematic. Aubrey's upset about watching the kids on Christmas Eve. My father's brow furrowed. But you're so good with them, pumpkin. And you don't have your own family to worry about like your siblings do. There it was again, the implication that my time was less valuable because I wasn't married with children. As if my career, my friends, my life in Chicago didn't count as real commitments. I have a life too, Dad. I have a career that's important to me. I was promoted to marketing director last month. That's nice, honey, he said absently, reaching past me for a cookie from the plate on the counter. But surely you can take one night to help your sisters and brother out. They're run ragged with all those little ones. Before I could respond, the front door opened, and I heard voices in the hallway. Apparently, my siblings weren't waiting until tomorrow after all. Megan entered the kitchen first, followed by Brian. Ashley must have still been on her way. Aubrey. Megan exclaimed, giving me a quick hug. You're actually here. The kids are going to be so excited to see you tomorrow. She might not be in the mood for kids, my mother said with a pointed look in my direction. Apparently, we're being unfair asking her to watch them during the Johnsons' party. Megan's smile faltered. Oh, but we always do it that way. You've been absent for years while we've been building families, she continued, a hint of accusation creeping into her tone. We see each other all the time, take turns hosting Sunday dinners, help with each other's kids. You just swoop in for holidays when it's convenient. I felt a flash of anger. I live in Chicago. That's a 12-hour drive. I can't exactly pop over for Sunday dinner. You chose to move away, Brian pointed out, inserting himself into the conversation. We all stayed within 30 minutes of Mom and Dad. Because I got a job opportunity, I countered. A good one that's now turned into a career I'm proud of. It's just one night, Aubrey, Brian said, shaking his head. Don't be selfish. Selfish, I repeated, unable to keep the disbelief from my voice. How is it selfish to want to be included in family activities instead of automatically assigned to childcare duty? Because that's what family does, my mother repeated, as if it were an irrefutable argument. By now, the kitchen had become crowded as spouses filtered in, drawn by the escalating tension. My brother-in-law Tyler, Megan's husband, gave me an awkward nod but kept his distance from the conflict. Brian's wife Rachel at least had the grace to look uncomfortable. You always think you're too important for us, came a new voice. Ashley had arrived, standing in the doorway with her arms crossed. At 25, my youngest sister had always been the most direct and often the most cutting of my siblings. That's not true, I said, feeling increasingly ganged up on. I just want to be treated like an adult with my own life, not the family's built-in babysitter. An adult understands responsibility to family, Ashley shot back. Not everything is about your big fancy marketing job in the city. You don't even know what my job entails, I pointed out. None of you have asked me a single question about my promotion or what I actually do. Because you never shut up about work when you do visit, Megan muttered, just loud enough to be heard. I felt a familiar tightness in my chest, the feeling of being completely misunderstood and unappreciated by the people who were supposed to know me best. 3 years away, and they still saw me as the same person I'd been in high school, reliable Aubrey, always available, never having priorities of her own. I'm going upstairs, I said finally, recognizing that this conversation wasn't productive. 6 against 1 were not odds in my favor, especially when they'd had years to reinforce their narrative about me. Dinner's in an hour, my mother called after me, as if we'd just been discussing the weather rather than having a family confrontation. Back in my childhood bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. Family photos hung in simple frames, me holding baby Ashley, all 4 of us kids at the beach, my high school graduation. Happy moments that now felt tinged with a complex mix of love and frustration. My phone buzzed with a text from my friend Natalie back in Chicago. How's the family Christmas going? Murder-free so far? Despite everything, I smiled. Natalie knew all about my family dynamics. We'd met at work 3 years ago and had become close friends, spending holidays together when I avoided going home. Another text arrived, this one from my boss Alexandra. Hope you're enjoying the break. Don't forget we're doing that charity thing when you get back. Merry Christmas. The charity thing. Alexandra's annual tradition of having the company sponsor families in need during the post-holiday season. Last year, we'd provided winter essentials and job interview outfits for a women's shelter. I stared at the text for a long moment as an idea began to take shape in my mind. If my family wasn't going to appreciate my presence, perhaps there were others who would. I had come home hoping for reconciliation, for recognition, for a place at the adult table. Instead, I'd found the same old patterns, calcified by time and reinforced by my absence. Nothing would change if I didn't change it myself. With newfound determination, I opened my laptop and began to search for local community centers and shelters in the area. Christmas was, after all, about giving. Just not in the way my family had planned. With dinner looming in less than an hour, I needed to work quickly. The first call I made was to Natalie, putting her on speaker while I continued my online research. They're using you as the Christmas Eve babysitter, she asked incredulously after I explained the situation. For 9 kids? Without even asking. Exactly, I confirmed, scrolling through a list of local community organizations. And when I confronted them, they made me feel like I was being selfish for wanting to participate in family activities. That's gaslighting 101, Natalie declared. So what's the plan? Are you coming back to Chicago early? I paused, considering. No, I don't think so. That would just reinforce their narrative that I'm the self-centered one who doesn't care about family. I'm thinking of something else. I'm listening, she said, curiosity evident in her voice. You know how you're hosting that toy drive party tomorrow night? Natalie had organized an event where her friends would bring gifts for children in need while enjoying cocktails and holiday cheer. Yeah, what if I did something similar here? Or better yet, found somewhere local I could volunteer on Christmas Eve instead of being the family's unpaid babysitter. I love it, Natalie said without hesitation. Hold on, my cousin works for a nonprofit in Boston. Let me text her and see if she knows any places near your parents that need help. While waiting, I called Alexandra, my boss. Despite being on vacation, she answered on the 3rd ring. Aubrey? Everything okay? Yes, sorry to bother you during the holidays, I said quickly. I was thinking about our charity initiative when we get back, and it got me wondering if the company would be open to a small-scale version I could do while I'm home for Christmas. There was a pause, then Alexandra's voice warmed. What did you have in mind? I explained my situation in professional terms, without the family drama and my desire to redirect my Christmas Eve toward helping others. I think that's a wonderful idea, she said when I finished. In fact, the company could probably provide some resources. We have that marketing budget surplus from the Johnson account after they scaled back their December campaign. What if we redirected some of that toward whatever organization you find? That would be amazing, I breathed, feeling a spark of excitement replacing my earlier frustration. Just send me the details once you have them. And Aubrey? I'm proud of you for turning a disappointing situation into something positive. By the time we hung up, I had a text from Natalie with a promising lead, Family Haven, a shelter for families experiencing homelessness, located just 20 minutes from my parents' house. They were specifically looking for volunteers for their Christmas Eve dinner and gift distribution. I immediately called the number Natalie had sent. The volunteer coordinator, a woman named Sarah, sounded slightly frazzled but enthusiastic when I explained I wanted to help. You're a Christmas miracle, she said. We just had 2 volunteers cancel because of the snowstorm forecast. Do you have any experience with event planning? I almost laughed. I'm a marketing director. Event planning is definitely in my wheelhouse. Perfect. We have gifts already donated, but we need help organizing the distribution, setting up the dinner, and generally creating a festive atmosphere for the families. Could you be here around noon on Christmas Eve? Absolutely, I promised. And actually, my company might be able to provide some additional resources. Would it be okay if I brought some extra surprises? By the time the call ended, I had a full volunteer schedule for Christmas Eve and a growing list of ideas for making the shelter's holiday celebration special. I would need supplies, though, and I definitely wouldn't be getting any sleep in my childhood bedroom with 9 kids running around the house. My next call was to a nearby hotel. Fortunately, they had a room available, a Christmas miracle indeed, considering the season. I booked it for 3 nights, starting that evening. I wasn't going to wait around for another uncomfortable family dinner or wake up to children jumping on my bed at dawn. Next, I created a detailed spreadsheet of gift alternatives for my nieces and nephews. Instead of the toys I'd brought, which required my physical presence to explain and enjoy, I quickly ordered gift cards to their favorite stores, scheduled for email delivery on Christmas morning. For my siblings and parents, I decided to keep the original gifts, but would leave them behind when I departed. As I worked, I felt a strange mixture of emotions, sadness at how things had turned out, but also a growing sense of purpose and even excitement about my new plans. For once, I was choosing how to spend my holiday rather than falling into the role assigned to me by family expectations. I had just finished packing my bags when there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find my mother standing there, surprise registering on her face as she took in my half-empty suitcase on the bed. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice somewhere between confusion and accusation. "I'm going to stay at a hotel," I said simply, continuing to fold a sweater. "A hotel? But you just got here. What about dinner?" "I made your favorite." "I appreciate that, Mom, but I think it's better if I have my own space this visit." Her face fell, then hardened slightly. "This is because of the babysitting, isn't it? You're punishing the whole family because we asked for one night of help." "You didn't ask," I pointed out, keeping my voice calm. "You assumed. And it's not punishment. It's me making choices about how I want to spend my holiday. By abandoning your family at Christmas." Her voice cracked slightly. "What am I supposed to tell your father?" "Your siblings. Tell them I love them, but I'm not available to be the default childcare solution anymore. I'm an adult with my own life and priorities." "We're your priority, Aubrey. We're your family." Her eyes welled with tears. "Don't you care about seeing your nieces and nephews? They've been talking about Aunt Aubrey for weeks." The guilt tactic was familiar and almost worked. I felt a pang of doubt. But then I remembered the casual dismissal of my career, the laughter about finally getting me to come home to solve their childcare problem. "I do care about them," I said softly. "But I also care about being respected as an individual, not just as a function I can serve for everyone else." My mother shook her head, clearly not understanding or not wanting to understand. "I don't know who you've become in that city, but this isn't the daughter I raised." "Maybe that's the problem, Mom. I'm not just the daughter you raised anymore. I'm my own person with my own life." She left without another word, the set of her shoulders communicating her disappointment more clearly than any further argument could have. I finished packing methodically, pushing down the guilt and doubt that threatened to derail my resolve. 45 minutes later, I carried my suitcase downstairs. The family was gathered in the dining room, the sound of silverware and subdued conversation floating through the hallway. No one came out to stop me as I quietly let myself out the front door and loaded my car. As I backed down the driveway, Christmas lights twinkling around me, I felt a complex mixture of liberation and sadness. This wasn't how I'd imagined my homecoming. But sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is change course when the familiar path leads only to more hurt. The hotel room wasn't fancy, but it was clean, quiet, and most importantly, mine. After checking in, I immediately transformed the standard double room into a holiday command center. I pushed the desk against the window for a makeshift workstation, set up my laptop, and spread out my notes and ideas for the shelter's Christmas celebration. My first call was back to Sarah at Family Haven to confirm details and share some of the ideas I'd developed. "You want to do all this by tomorrow?" she asked, sounding both impressed and slightly overwhelmed. "I've planned major marketing campaigns with less notice," I assured her. "And I have company resources to help make it happen." Next, I called Natalie for a brainstorming session, putting her on speaker while I created a detailed action plan. "What about those light-up snowflake projectors we used at the office party?" she suggested. "They're affordable and create instant atmosphere." "Perfect," I agreed, adding it to my shopping list. "And I'm thinking personalized gift bags for each child with age-appropriate items." By 10 p.m., I had a comprehensive plan and a shopping list for the next morning. I'd also received approval from Alexandra to use $2,000 from our marketing budget surplus for the shelter's celebration, far more than I'd hoped for. The next morning, I was up early and already at the local Target when it opened. I filled 2 shopping carts with decorations, craft supplies, small gifts, and festive treats. The cashier raised an eyebrow at my holiday haul. "Big family?" she asked as she scanned item after item. "Something like that," I replied with a smile. By noon, I was pulling up to Family Haven with my car packed to the roof. The shelter was housed in a converted school building, worn but well-maintained, with children's artwork visible in the windows. Sarah met me at the entrance, her eyes widening at the sight of all the supplies. "You weren't kidding," she said, helping me unload the first armful of bags. Inside, I was introduced to the shelter staff and several resident families. There were currently 12 families staying at the shelter, including 17 children ranging from infants to teenagers. As Sarah gave me a tour, I was struck by the dignity and warmth the staff maintained despite limited resources. The common areas were clean and decorated with homemade paper chains and snowflakes, but my professional eye could see how much potential there was to create something truly special. We set up in the multi-purpose room, which would serve as both dinner venue and gift distribution center. As I hung twinkling lights and arranged centerpieces, I worked alongside shelter residents who volunteered to help. A woman named Teresa showed particular interest in the decorating. "You have a good eye," I told her as she rearranged a centerpiece I'd been struggling with. "I used to work in visual merchandising," she said quietly. Before everything happened. We fell into conversation as we worked, and I learned that Teresa and her 2 children had been at the shelter for 3 months after leaving an abusive relationship. Despite everything, she was determined to make Christmas special for her kids. "They've been through so much," she explained, carefully placing a paper snowflake. "I want them to know that magic can still exist even when life is hard." Her words hit me hard. Here was a woman facing genuinely difficult circumstances, yet focused on creating joy for her children. My family squabbles suddenly seemed petty in comparison. Around 4 p.m., as we were finalizing the preparations, my phone rang. It was my brother Brian. "Where the hell are you?" he demanded without preamble. "Mom's been crying, and the kids keep asking why and Aubrey left before they even saw her." I took a deep breath. "I'm volunteering at Family Haven Shelter for their Christmas Eve celebration." There was a pause. "A shelter? Instead of being with your family?" "Yes, Brian. I made a choice to spend my holiday somewhere I'm appreciated rather than taken for granted." "This is about the babysitting thing, isn't it?" he sighed. "Look, I get that we sprung that on you, but walking out on Christmas is a bit extreme, don't you think?" Something in his tone, less accusatory than earlier, with a hint of genuine confusion, made me soften my approach. "It wasn't just the babysitting, Brian. It was hearing all of you talk about me like my time doesn't matter, like my career is just a hobby, like my only value to the family is as free childcare." Another pause, longer this time. "I didn't realize it felt that way to you." "How else would it feel?" I asked, stepping away from the bustling activity to a quiet corner. "You guys planned an entire evening out while assuming I'd watch all 9 kids without even asking me. You laughed about finally getting me to come home to solve your childcare problem. When you put it that way." His voice trailed off. "I guess I never thought about it from your perspective." The admission, small as it was, felt significant. "Well, now you know. So what's the shelter thing? What are you doing there exactly?" I explained about Family Haven and the Christmas Eve celebration we were preparing. As I described the families and our plans, I could hear his attitude shifting. "That actually sounds pretty amazing," he admitted finally. "Mom made it sound like you were just hiding in a hotel room to spite us." "I'm not spiteful, Brian. I'm just tired of being taken for granted." There was a long pause before he asked, "Would it be weird if I came to help? I could bring Emma and Noah. Might be good for them to see, that not everyone has what we have." The request surprised me. "You want to bring the kids to help at the shelter?" "Yeah, if that's okay. Rachel can handle the family dinner prep with Mom." And honestly, I could use a break from Ashley and Megan's bickering about who makes better mashed potatoes. I found myself smiling. "I'd like that. We could use the help, and it would be nice to actually spend time with my niece and nephew." An hour later, Brian arrived with Emma and Noah in tow, both children wide-eyed as they took in the transformed multipurpose room. 9-year-old Emma immediately gravitated toward the craft table where we were making place cards, while 7-year-old Noah was fascinated by the light projectors creating swirling snowflakes on the ceiling. "This is way cooler than Grandma's house," Noah declared, earning a wry smile from his father. As we worked side by side setting up the dinner service, Brian grew increasingly quiet and thoughtful. "I owe you an apology," he said finally, when the kids were occupied helping other volunteers. "We really have been taking you for granted all these years." "Thank you for acknowledging that," I said simply. "It's just, you were always so good at taking care of everyone. Even when we were kids, you were the one who knew how to make things better." I guess we all just fell into assuming that's what you wanted to do. "I do like helping," I admitted. "But I also like being asked rather than expected to do it. And I like being recognized for my other qualities too, my professional achievements, my ideas, my interests outside of being helpful to the family. Brian nodded slowly. That's fair. More than fair. As the evening progressed, I was struck by how different it felt to interact with Brian and his children in this context. Without the pressure of family expectations and established roles, we related to each other more authentically. I learned about Emma's newfound interest in astronomy and Noah's elaborate Lego constructions. Brian asked thoughtful questions about my work and seemed genuinely impressed by my recent promotion. Marketing director is a big deal, he said. I had no idea you were managing an entire department now. By the time the shelter families began arriving for the celebration, my phone was buzzing with texts from other family members. My parents' messages were still tinged with hurt and confusion, but Megan showed signs of coming around. Brian says the shelter looks amazing. Maybe we could bring the twins over after dinner? Mom's handling the Johnsons' party situation. Even Ashley, usually the most judgmental, sent a grudging, "Mom says you're doing some volunteer thing instead of Christmas Eve with us." That actually sounds pretty cool. Got room for more helpers. As the evening unfolded, the shelter's multipurpose room filled with laughter, music, and the delighted exclamations of children receiving unexpected gifts. I found myself moving between organizing the volunteers, now including most of my siblings and their older children, and making sure everything ran smoothly. At one point, I stepped back to take in the scene, my nieces and nephews helping serve food to shelter residents, my siblings engaging in conversations with families who had far less material wealth, but just as much dignity and humanity. My brother-in-law Tyler was playing an impromptu game of charades with a group of children. Ashley's husband was helping a teenage boy set up the new headphones we'd provided. My phone buzzed again, a text from my mother. "Your father and I are skipping the Johnsons' party." "Where exactly is this shelter?" "We'd like to bring some of the food I prepared. No one should miss my Christmas Eve dinner." As I typed the address in reply, I felt a complex mixture of emotions, vindication, certainly, but also hope that perhaps this disruption of our family patterns might lead to something better. Christmas morning dawned clear and cold, sunlight glinting off fresh snow. I woke in my hotel room feeling strangely peaceful. The previous night's shelter celebration had been a resounding success, continuing well past its scheduled end time as my family integrated seamlessly with the volunteers and residents. By the time we finished cleaning up, it was nearly midnight. We'd parted with tentative plans for Christmas Day, but nothing definite. Part of me expected the old patterns to reassert themselves once the novelty of the shelter experience wore off. My phone chimed with a text from Brian. "Merry Christmas. The kids are asking if Shelter Aunt Aubrey is coming for presents. Mom's making cinnamon rolls. Come over whenever you're ready. Shelter Aunt Aubrey." The nickname made me smile despite myself. I took my time getting ready, mentally preparing for whatever the day might bring. By the time I arrived at my parents' house, it was mid-morning. The driveway was filled with my siblings' cars, and I could hear childish shrieks of excitement from inside. My mother opened the door before I could knock, her expression a complex mixture of emotions. "Merry Christmas, Aubrey," she said, pulling me into a tight hug that lasted longer than usual. The living room was a chaos of torn wrapping paper, excited children, and adults nursing coffee mugs. 9 children in various states of holiday excitement were playing with new toys, comparing gifts, and consuming what appeared to be dangerous amounts of sugar. "There she is," my father called out when he spotted me. "The Christmas hero." The room quieted somewhat as all eyes turned to me. I felt momentarily uncomfortable with the attention, especially when I noticed my mother's slight flinch at my father's choice of words. "I brought cinnamon rolls from that bakery you like," my mother said quickly, ushering me toward the kitchen. "And coffee's fresh." In the relative quiet of the kitchen, away from the children's excitement, my mother busied herself fixing me a plate. "What your father meant," she said without looking at me, "is that the children at the shelter, they haven't stopped talking about Miss Aubrey and the wonderful Christmas party." She finally met my eyes. "We're very proud of what you did." The acknowledgement, small as it was, felt significant coming from her. "Thank you," I said simply. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said," she continued, handing me a mug of coffee. "About feeling taken for granted. About us not recognizing your life outside of the family. I waited, giving her space to continue. I won't pretend I understand all of it, she admitted. In my day, family always came first, no questions asked. But times are different now, and you're different from me. She paused. That's not a bad thing, even if it sometimes takes me by surprise. Before I could respond, Brian appeared in the doorway. The natives are getting restless about Aunt Aubrey's presence, he reported with a smile. Though I've tried explaining that watching 9 kids open more presents might not be her idea of Christmas morning fun. I recognized his comment for what it was, an acknowledgement of our conversation, a small sign that he, at least, was trying to see things from my perspective. Actually, I said, I'd love to see them open their gifts. Just let me finish this amazing cinnamon roll first. The morning unfolded with surprising ease. The children were indeed excited about their presents, but I noticed my siblings making efforts to curb their more chaotic impulses rather than leaving me to manage them. When Madison wanted to show me her dance routine, the one Ashley had mentioned in that overheard conversation, her mother came along to help set up the music and cleared space in the den. You don't have to do this alone, Ashley said quietly as we watched Madison practice. I'm sorry we made you feel that way. Around noon, my mother announced that Christmas dinner would be at 4, giving everyone time to relax and enjoy their gifts. I expected the old pattern to emerge, the men watching football, the women in the kitchen, the children left in my care, but instead, Megan approached me with an unexpected proposal. We thought we'd take shifts with the kids this afternoon, she explained. 2 adults at a time, rotating every hour. That way everyone gets some adult time and some kid time. She smiled tentatively. And you get first choice adult time now or later? The simple acknowledgement of my right to choose nearly brought tears to my eyes. Now would be great, I admitted. I actually brought my laptop to show Dad some pictures of my new condo in Chicago. He mentioned wanting to see it last time we talked. Perfect, Megan nodded. Tyler and I have first kid shift. Go find Dad, I think he's in his study. I found my father sorting through old Christmas cards, a tradition he maintained despite my mother's regular attempts to get him to throw them away. Hey, pumpkin, he greeted me. Escaping the chaos? Actually, I wanted to show you those condo pictures I mentioned a few months ago. His face lit up with genuine interest. The place you bought after the promotion? I'd love to see it. As we scrolled through photos of my new home, my father asked thoughtful questions about the neighborhood, the amenities, even my decorating choices. For the first time in years, I felt like he was seeing me as an adult with a fully formed life, not just his daughter who is good with kids. You've really built something for yourself there, he said finally, a note of pride in his voice. Your mother and I, we worry about you being alone, but looking at all this, at what you've accomplished, I can see why you'd be protective of it. The conversation shifted to my work, and I found myself explaining projects I'd led, challenges I'd overcome, successes I'd achieved. He listened attentively, asking questions that revealed genuine interest rather than polite obligation. You know, he said thoughtfully, I think we've been so busy seeing what we thought you were missing, a husband, children, the life your siblings chose, that we failed to see what you were building instead. That's on us, not you. The simple acknowledgement meant more than any elaborate apology could have. Throughout the afternoon, I noticed subtle but significant changes in how my family interacted with me. My siblings made efforts to engage me in adult conversations, asked about my life in Chicago, expressed genuine interest in my work. The rotation of childcare duties continued seamlessly, with everyone taking their turn without complaint. During dinner preparations, I found myself in the kitchen with my mother and sisters, but instead of being assigned the children's table by default, I was asked if I'd prefer to help with cooking or spend time with the kids before dinner. Actually, I'd love to help with the cooking, I said, surprising even myself. I've been taking those online cooking classes I mentioned last summer. Ashley raised an eyebrow. The ones with that famous chef? I thought you were just talking about that, not actually doing it. I've completed 3 levels, I admitted. I make a pretty impressive cocoa vin now. You'll have to make it for us sometime, my mother said, handing me a knife and a pile of vegetables to chop. Maybe next time we visit you in Chicago instead of always expecting you to come here. The casual offer, acknowledgement that they could come to me rather than always expecting the reverse, nearly made me drop the knife. By the time we gathered around the dinner table, the atmosphere had transformed. Children still needed help cutting food and occasional reminders about table manners, but the responsibilities were shared naturally among all the adults. Conversation flowed easily between topics relevant to everyone, not just child-centric discussions. After dinner, as we relaxed in the living room, my mother cleared her throat to gain everyone's attention. "I think we need some new Christmas traditions," she announced. "Starting with our volunteer work at the shelter. Aubrey, would you be willing to help us coordinate something like that again next year? You obviously have a talent for it." "I'd love to," I said sincerely. "And my company might be interested in a more formal sponsorship arrangement. I could talk to my boss about it." "Your boss seemed lovely from the brief interaction we had," my mother commented. "Alexandra, was it? She mentioned how valuable you are to the company." The simple acknowledgement of my professional relationships, the recognition that I had a life with meaningful connections outside the family, felt like a gift in itself. As the evening wound down, my youngest niece Lily climbed into my lap with a picture book, while her mother Megan sat beside us. "You're a good aunt," Megan said quietly. "Not because you watch the kids or help with them, but because you love them and bring something unique to their lives." Madison hasn't stopped talking about how her aunt is a marketing boss lady who helps people. "You're giving them a different model of what a woman's life can be." I hadn't thought about it that way before, that my difference from my sisters might be a gift to their children rather than just an inconvenience to their parents. "And we're going to do better," Megan continued, "about respecting your time and your choices. I can't promise we won't slip up sometimes, old habits and all that, but we're going to try." As Lily snuggled against me, already half asleep despite the early hour, I felt something shift and settle within me. The reconciliation wasn't perfect or complete. Real family change never happens overnight, but it was a beginning. Later that night, as I prepared to return to my hotel, a choice my family now respected without protest, my mother pulled me aside. "Will you come for breakfast tomorrow? Ashley and Brian are bringing their kids over. We thought we might all go to the shelter afterward, see if they need help with anything else before you head back to Chicago." "I'd like that," I said, and meant it. The Christmas that had started with overhearing a hurtful conversation had transformed into something unexpected, the beginning of a new relationship with my family, one based on mutual respect rather than assumed roles. It wasn't the Christmas I had planned, but in many ways, it was better. The day after Christmas dawned with heavy snow that blanketed the neighborhood in pristine white. I arrived at my parents' house to find Ashley's kids already building a snowman in the front yard, their excited shrieks punctuating the quiet morning. Inside, the smell of bacon and coffee created an inviting atmosphere that felt different from the tension-filled house I'd first arrived at just days ago. "Morning, marketing director," my father greeted me with a smile and a fresh mug of coffee. "Sleep well at your fancy hotel." There was no bitterness in his tone, just gentle teasing that acknowledged my choices rather than challenging them. "Better than I would have with 9 kids running around," I replied, accepting the coffee gratefully. My mother emerged from the kitchen wearing an apron that said Chief Executive Chef, a Christmas gift from Brian that seemed particularly fitting given our recent conversations about recognizing everyone's roles and contributions. "We're having a family meeting after breakfast," she announced. "Nothing dramatic," she added quickly, noting my expression. "Just some new ground rules for holidays going forward." As we gathered around the dining table, my siblings and their spouses forming a circle of adult conversation with the children playing in the adjacent room, I was struck by how different the dynamic felt. Just a few days ago, I would have automatically been relegated to supervising the kids rather than included in the adult discussion. "First," my mother began, "I want to apologize again for how we've treated you, Aubrey. We fell into patterns that weren't fair to you, and we didn't even realize we were doing it." "Family patterns are powerful things," I acknowledged. "I played my part too, by going along with it for so many years." "Well, no more," my father declared. "We've come up with some new family holiday rules that we wanted to run by you." Megan pulled out a notebook where she'd jotted down points from what had clearly been previous family discussions held without me. Rule 1. Childcare responsibilities are shared equally among all adults, with a rotating schedule so everyone gets both kid time and adult time, she read. That includes Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and any other family gatherings. Rule 2. Brian continued, everyone's career and personal commitments are respected equally, regardless of whether they include children or not. Rule 3, Ashley added, we make an effort to visit Aubrey in Chicago at least twice a year instead of always expecting her to come to us. And we'll actually explore the city instead of just sitting in her apartment talking about the kids. I felt a lump forming in my throat as they continued through the list, each rule addressing an aspect of the family dynamic that had made me feel undervalued or taken for granted. And finally, my mother concluded, we're establishing a new Christmas tradition of service, inspired by what you organized at Family Haven. Each year, one family member will take the lead on choosing and coordinating our volunteer activity, but we'll all participate. I've already called dibs on next Christmas, Brian said with a grin. No pressure following your act, but I have some ideas involving the animal shelter where we got our dog. These are really thoughtful, I managed, genuinely moved by the effort they'd made. Thank you. We should have done this years ago, my father said seriously. Maybe then we wouldn't have lost 3 Christmases with you. I don't think of them as lost, I said after a moment of reflection. I needed that time to build my own life, to become secure enough in myself to stand up to the family patterns. And maybe you all needed time to realize those patterns weren't working anymore. Well, I for one am glad you finally said something, Ashley admitted. I've been feeling overwhelmed with 4 kids, but I never felt like I could ask for help without being judged for not handling it all perfectly. That's another thing we need to work on, Megan agreed. Being honest about needing help instead of just expecting it from Aubrey by default. The conversation shifted to practical matters, planning the next family gathering, discussing summer vacation possibilities that might include a trip to Chicago, coordinating schedules for regular video calls to stay better connected between visits. Later that morning, we all headed to Family Haven, bringing leftover food and offering help with post-Christmas cleanup. The shelter director, Cameron, seemed surprised to see our entire family contingent. Aubrey said you might be stopping by, but I didn't expect everyone, he said, smiling as the children immediately gravitated toward the shelter's small playground. We're thinking this might become a family tradition, my father explained. As we worked alongside shelter residents and other volunteers, I found myself in conversation with Rachel, a shelter volunteer I'd connected with on Christmas Eve. Your family seems really great, she observed as we sorted donated clothing together. They are, I agreed, watching my nieces and nephews playing with shelter children, no visible distinction between them in their shared joy. We've had some growing pains, but we're figuring it out. That's the thing about families, Rachel said thoughtfully. The good ones grow together, even when it's uncomfortable. Her words stayed with me throughout the day and into the evening as I prepared for my drive back to Chicago the following morning. My hotel room, once a refuge from family tension, now felt unnecessarily separate. When my mother called to invite me to stay my final night at the house, I found myself accepting. Fair warning though, I added, I have early calls with international clients tomorrow, so I'll need some quiet time in the morning. Of course, she replied without hesitation. We'll make sure everyone knows your work needs come first in the morning. That simple acknowledgement that my professional responsibilities were valid family priorities felt like the culmination of all we'd discussed. My last night at home wasn't perfect. Madison had a meltdown over a broken toy, the twins got into an argument during dinner, and baby James was teething, his cries occasionally piercing the evening calm. But the difference was that I wasn't expected to solve these problems alone. Each parent handled their own children, occasionally asking for help rather than assuming it. After the younger children were in bed, my siblings and I gathered in the living room with our parents, sharing stories and catching up in a way we rarely had time for during busy holiday events. You know, Ashley said thoughtfully during a lull in conversation, I was jealous of you for a long time, Aubrey. Of me? I asked, genuinely surprised. Why? your freedom, your career, the fact that you got to build your life exactly how you wanted it. She glanced toward the stairs where her children were sleeping. Don't get me wrong, I love my kids more than anything. But sometimes I look at your life and wonder what it would be like to just be responsible for yourself. And I've sometimes envied your certainty, I admitted. You all seemed so sure about the kind of life you wanted: marriage, children, staying close to home. I've spent a lot of time wondering if I'm missing something essential by choosing differently. I think that's the thing we all need to remember, Brian interjected. We're all making trade-offs. Different choices come with different rewards and different challenges. And different choices deserve equal respect, my mother added quietly, reaching over to squeeze my hand. The next morning, as I packed my car for the drive back to Chicago, each family member came to say a proper goodbye. The children gave me drawings and made me promise to video call them to see their new toys in action. My siblings offered genuine invitations to visit them individually, not just during large family gatherings. My father helped carry my bags to the car, pausing before closing the trunk. I'm proud of you, Aubrey, he said simply. Not just for your career success, but for having the courage to stand up for yourself, even when it was hard. Even when it meant disappointing us temporarily for something better in the long run. My mother's goodbye was the last, her hug lingering as if trying to make up for the tension of the past few days. Thank you for changing your plans, she whispered. Not just the babysitting, but everything. You changed our family for the better. As I drove away, watching my family waving from the driveway in my rearview mirror, I reflected on all that had transpired since I first overheard that conversation about babysitting. What had begun as a painful revelation of how my family saw me had transformed into an opportunity for growth and change. The journey back to Chicago gave me time to process the lessons of this unexpected Christmas. Sometimes standing up for yourself feels selfish in the moment, but leads to healthier relationships in the long run. By refusing to accept the role assigned to me, I had created space for a more authentic connection with my family. Patterns established in childhood can persist long into adulthood unless consciously challenged. We had all been playing our assigned parts without questioning whether they still fit who we had become. Turning disappointment into service had not only helped the shelter families, but had given my own family a new perspective on what the holidays could mean. Most importantly, I had learned that love sometimes requires confrontation. By avoiding conflict for so many years, I had actually prevented my family from knowing the real me, with all my strengths, accomplishments, and boundaries. When I arrived home to my condo that evening, I found an email from Alexandra asking how the shelter event had gone. Attached was approval for a formal company sponsorship of Family Haven's programs throughout the coming year, a professional opportunity that had emerged from a personal challenge. I also had a text from my mother. Just wanted to make sure you got home safely. The kids are already asking when we can all visit you in Chicago. We're thinking spring break if that works for your schedule. And another from Brian. Thanks for showing us a different kind of Christmas. Emma asked if we could volunteer somewhere every month, not just on holidays. Think you started something big, sis? As I settled into my own space, I felt a new kind of connection to my family, one based not on obligation or assumed roles, but on mutual respect and growing understanding. The Christmas that began with overhearing hurtful plans had ended with a new beginning for all of us. Life rarely goes according to plan, and sometimes that's for the best. By changing my Christmas plans, I had helped change my family's perspective. And in doing so, I discovered that standing firm in your own worth isn't selfish, it's often the greatest gift you can give to those you love. Have you ever had to stand up to your family to create healthier boundaries? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories about navigating family dynamics and finding your own path. Thank you for watching, and remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to gently but firmly change the plans that no longer serve you.